Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the afternoon of day one, a keynote at the C3EB Summit, the Culturally Competent Conversations for Equity and Belongingness. And this keynote is going to be so powerful and it is so timely that I am really, really excited to bring it to you. Before we get into it, just a couple of housekeeping notes for everybody. If you want to engage and connect with each other and comment as this live stream is happening and as this keynote is happening, make sure you tune into us from our YouTube channel at the C3EB Summit or just C3EB Summit. There's no the in front of it. You'll be able to comment and we'll be able to see your comments there. So I'm very, very excited about this summit that all the housekeeping was done. Without further ado, I am thrilled to introduce to all of you my dear friend, my energy power goddess friend, Ber-Henda Williams. Ber-Henda is a visionary and empath coach who supports women to embrace their empathic gifts, shift culture, and break barriers through their mission-based businesses. She is also pretty formidable with the pen, as she is an award-winning poet and is the founder of the Power of Girlhood, a leadership institute for girls 8 through 18. The Power of Girlhood is a non-profit organization that does leadership training and provides a lot of support for these young people who identify as female from the ages of 8 through 18. So if you are ever looking for a great cause to support and donate to, the Power of Girlhood would be an amazing cause. You cannot go wrong with that. Ber-Henda's been running it for 9 years now, and it is a mind-blowing nonprofit. But that all being said, this is Ber-Henda's time. So without further ado, welcome, Ber-Henda. Take it away.
Thank you so much for having me, AJ. So I am so thrilled to be here on this summit. And the title of my talk today is Calling in Black. And I think that it is so appropriate right now for us to talk about safe places, safe spaces in our work environments, specifically for people of color. So I just wanted to share just a few things for us to be mindful of, because I do believe in mindfulness. I do believe in collaboration, and I do believe in visioning. And as AJ said, I'm a visionary empath coach, and I work with young women and girls with the Power of Girlhood organization. And in particular, these girls are African American, Muslim, and Latina girls. And we want to, at least I want to endeavor in creating a world that works for all, creating a world that is a safe space for them to flourish, to explore, to have their needs met, but also in a safe way for them to also contribute. And then creating a better world that works for them, we're also creating a better world that works for us. So I just wanted to talk our journey today. So we're gonna take a journey. Somebody say journey. I want to see if you all are out here with me. Give me an emoji, a hand clap, just so that I know that you're here with me. And even if you're catching this in the replay, I again want to greet you as well. So as we take this journey, we're going to look at the current institutional culture. We're going to look at being performative versus integrated. We're going to move beyond representation into full inclusion. We're going to look at the emotional labor and cultural awareness months and holidays, and also anti-racism as a mindfulness practice, because anti-racism is mindfulness at its highest degree. So as we take this trek together, I hope that there's something here that you find that you can start to implement immediately. Things here that make you go, aha, things that make you kind of move into an introspective space. But above all, things that are going to make environments for people of color, more welcoming, but also a place that the growth can happen and also the culture shift that is necessary for us to have a better world. So when we look at the current institutional culture, we're still seeing that payment from the streets to the boardroom, from schools to politics, uh, diversity might be there, yet inclusion and equity are missing. So, what do I mean by that? There's still a gender gap that exists, that for every dollar that a white man makes, a non Hispanic woman, an African American woman, a Native American woman, all make considerably less. Latina women are making 53 cents on the dollar, while Native American women are making 58 cents on the dollar, and Black women are making 61 cents on the dollar. And I find that even in 2020, we're seeing these kinds of disparagements. And so we have to look at the institutions, we have to look at our education, we have to look at the support that is still yielding such little return for people of color when it comes to doing the same work uh, and in the same environment. And one of the ways that we can do that is to, for sure, have mentorship opportunities, meaning that we're reaching back, we're reaching into the neighborhoods, we're reaching into the spaces that our businesses occupy. I'm just going to be really honest and really blunt here. We know where the Black side of town is, where the Latino side of town is, where the Arabic or Middle Eastern part of town is. We understand how that works. For those of us who have children, we're looking at the school system. And so we know what neighborhoods house the best schools. But let's look at wherever you're operating your business, where can you contribute? Where can you give back? Where can you invest? I firmly believe in operating, yes, globally, but investing locally. So, where are the neighborhoods? Where are the opportunities for growth? And where are the opportunities for investment? And when you begin to invest, particularly in your local community, you're also helping yourself by growing the next generation of your talent. Because people, I love this Maya Angelou quote. She says that people never forget how you make them feel. And I'm just going to say that again. People never forget how you make them feel. So, inclusion, right? Not just the diversity, but the inclusivity of wrapping your arms around a community gives them a sense of belongingness. And within your company dynamic, it also helps to strengthen your culture and not just giving lip service to the posting that one may make on their website about what their mission and their value statements are. This puts it into practice. This makes it tangible. This makes it very real. And so as we move into, again, the outward appearances, right? So those are the performative pieces. So we're talking about being integrated versus being performative. So it's nice to have a glossy website with a beautifully crafted mission statement. And maybe you might have some photos or stock photos on the website, maybe some pictures of when you gave during the holiday season. But right now, in the middle of a pandemic, there are two pandemics that people of color, Black people express they're dealing with. And that is, of course, COVID-19, but also the pandemic of institutional and structural racism. And so within your culture, there is an impact that on several levels impact your employees in the workplace. I can remember expressly where I was when I heard about the murder of Trayvon Martin, the murder of Philando Castile. And just pausing for a moment, when we talk about the murder of Philando Castile, I think that one was probably one of the most visceral. Tamir Rice. I can remember being in a work environment. This is before I had full-time entrepreneurship, and I had to move on. I had to grieve in my own way and then move on. That is a horrible place to be. In many cases, when we look at the grieving process, most companies' standard procedures to give you 3 days bereavement. But how in 3 days do you fully mourn the life of someone close to you? And even though in this instance, myself and many other people in this country and in this world throughout the African diaspora were not blood related to this man, it was yet another chipping away, another piece of injury that we had to endure collectively. And it was one of those moments where the world saw the lynching of a Black man. And it reminded me very much of a Billie Holiday song, Strange Fruit. And that song, it's a very visceral song. You can look it up, it's on YouTube. But the song was her very emotional reaction to lynchings that were happening in this country. Lynching is very pervasive in this country, and we're still dealing with legislation to outlaw it. So I bring up history for a very important point. I bring up history and bringing it into the context of our current events of how this impacts your employees, the space to grieve, the space to breathe, and the space to be. So while the social emotional component, yes, is not necessarily expressly the job of the employer, however, to support the goal and mission of the organization, which is to not only, yes, compensate the employee, but leave room for innovation, leave room for growth opportunity, leave room for new ideas. But if one is in a state of grief and in a state of panic and dismay, those things can't happen. And it is incumbent upon the employer to at the look at holistically the population in which is helping to serve the company's mission. And that could easily turn into a loyal employee base and then also a loyal client base. I know that it can be very difficult to have these tough conversations. And in many cases, we say, don't bring religion and politics into the job. But humanity is not political. Humanity is not necessarily doing the right thing. It's the only thing to do. When we're in positions of power, we must use our positions. We must use our influence. We must use our sphere to create the change that we want to see. And when you create mentoring opportunities, when you take a moment and not just send out a company-wide email acknowledging the loss and the impact, what are the steps each and every day that you are taking to make sure that this becomes a world that works for all and that there is truly an employee, consultant, wherever it is that you are, team that feels heard, that feels taken care of, that feels supported. So these are some things that we need to really pause and think about when we look at workplaces that are going to support the well-being of people of color. And a bit about sponsorship. Mentoring, of course, is needed so that the new employee or the team member understands the company culture, but also the company must understand the culture of the team member and also the employee. So sponsorship is very important. So what do I mean by sponsorship? I mean for the mobility, for the growth. We don't have to wait till we get to the tennis court or to the country club to start leveraging opportunities. If we want our talent to truly grow and flourish, they need sponsorship. And in particular, for women, it is so important for women to sponsor other women, not building them up in your own image and likeness. No, what I mean is truly being an advocate, taking the time to understand what the employee or what the team member truly wants, and providing a platform, leveraging your contacts and connections to help support the mobility of that team member or employee, particularly when it comes to those of color, so that when we look at the landscape of our company, we don't have to wonder why there's only a small percentage, particularly in areas such as finance. Still very white male age, I might add, dominated. If we want to have a viable economic future, then we truly do have to diversify the representation. The next point that I would like to make is a very crucial one. We want to move beyond just the representation and move into full inclusion. So we hear so much now, especially in our lexicon, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I'm so glad that the additional line in this particular summit is belongingness. We want to create a safe space of belongingness. And the only way that that can happen for us to really truly move into inclusivity is to invite and make sure that the space, though, as we're making the invitation, is safe. Making sure that when things go, before things go out, that there is an opportunity for feedback, that there is a space where we diminish retaliation and that we diminish, or don't diminish rather, the lived experience of another. And I think that social worker and thought leader Brene Brown does a really great job of adding the science and data to the lived experience. That is the richness when we become more inclusive, is when we have a culture that is inclusive and gives an opportunity for witnessing and to be heard. And so as we're building company culture, right, even as leaders, a leader, a true leader is a servant leader, a compassionate leader, and one that hears and takes in the perspectives and then makes a decision that is good for all. And there are ways to do that. So if we have inclusivity, then there's the witnessing and the hearing and understanding that gets applied to how we lead. What initiatives are important to the organization, and the accountability to make sure that the mission that is stated is the mission that is lived. And I want to talk also too about emotional labor and cultural awareness, particularly around the months and holidays. So for many organizations, many companies, this June became the first June, to my knowledge, in the history that many Fortune 500 companies, many larger organizations have acknowledged Juneteenth. which is a celebration that was initiated in Texas because the Jubilee, unfortunately, when we look at the history, and that's again really important why I said we got to go back to history, because history does play out our culture. It is a series of repeated actions and beliefs that are perpetuated. And Juneteenth in Texas, the slaves didn't even know that they were free, and that's when they became aware. And so Juneteenth, because we're not really sure what the date was, slaves finally were made aware that they were free. And a bit of personal history, even in my own family, on my mother's side, the patriarch of our family was actually purchased in 1869. 1869. So that means 4 years after slavery was technically abolished. In many states, Alabama, slaves were still being purchased. So this is not a phenomenon unique to Texas. And so we say all that to say that yes, the Juneteenth needs to be acknowledged. Our history, no matter how painful and horrific, needs to be acknowledged so that it is not repeated. We have to move beyond just those holidays in recognition of said employees or team members. In October, we're getting ready to come into Hispanic Heritage Month. But the plight of the brothers and sisters of our Latinx communities cannot simply be acknowledged in just a month. It has to be fully integrated. What are the issues of the community? What is the plight of the community? The ability to move through the world without code switching or being able to speak your language, being able to have your culture acknowledged, but also the issues that affect our DACA students. Understanding that we have a concentration camp at the southern border of our country is still hugely problematic. So again, I invite you to look at ways that the emotional labor is not placed on the marginalized or minority group within an organization. How does the organization then, one, acknowledge, celebrate, revere, and support with social responsibility the issues of the team, the company, the employees? There's a phenomenon in particular called weathering, and weathering of Black women in particular. And weathering is a phenomenon that suggests that the more education that a Black woman obtains, the more she is weathered, the more she is challenged mentally, emotionally, spiritually in the environment, because there are not people that look like her. And we have had discussions around microaggressions that exist. And so it is not comforting to be in a place where you may be the one, the token, or the only. And we have to take into consideration, again, the well-being and the way that that shifts. One of the ways that that can shift is how we do the engagement, all the way from the onboarding to the retention piece, and even the offboarding, or when people leave the organization. How do we nurture? How do we nurture our community? How do we nurture those who are on our teams? How do we nurture? So I'm not saying all of this that, oh, woe is us, or pity me. I'm not saying it for that. But I am saying for mindfulness, to be aware of the impact that being in certain environments. We have to also remember that there are still people that are coming to this country, and there are people who have been in this country where they may be the first generation to obtain a degree, the first generation to create a shift within their own families that is going to last for generations to come. And that is an insurmountable pressure. And so if you're leading a company, particularly for those of us who are female identified, it is so important that we take on the responsibility of making sure that safe spaces are created. Because even as women, this is something that we can wholeheartedly relate to. Sadly, many women have been at the forefront of horrible, horrible comments, horrible, horrible sentiments, treatment, been the first, had their authority challenged simply because they were a woman. Now add the layer of race on that. Add the layer of orientation on that. So empathy and compassion are very important pillars that we're going to need to have within the infrastructure of our organizations and companies. So I want to leave you with this last point. Anti-racism is vital for mindfulness. It is mindfulness in the highest degree. So how are you engaging on the application and interview process? What are the core values? Well, your potential employees, where are they volunteering? Where are they mentoring? Where are they investing? These are all legitimate questions that you can even ask in the application process, that you can ask in the interview process, and something that you take on as you infuse it into your culture, where you take once a quarter an outreach effort, a collective effort that the whole organization takes part in. I remember working for one of my previous employers, and this was during the Flint water crisis. And I said to the CEO that we could do better than just donate water. And his rebuttal was, well, Williams, what do you have in mind? And I said, well, let's join the water brigade. Let's take some time out of our weekend and go up to Flint and let's help pass out water. And so we created T-shirts, and we did create a tailgate up there, a caravan to Flint to help pass out water. But what I noticed for many people, that it was something that they had never thought of. There was something that happened on the internal part of the employee station. They felt better. There was a sense of contribution that sets off, and it does set off the reward center of the brain. And an encouragement to keep going, to looking at other ways that we can be givers, to look at other ways that we can contribute to our community, other ways that we can give back. So in closing, I just really want us to be mindful of calling in Black, calling in and taking our time away from our workplaces is not a thing that one really should have to do, because the space feels unsafe. The space feels unwelcoming. The space feels like a place where I am not heard, I am not witnessed, I am not accepted. We know that when we have a multitude of differences, when we have the different perspectives, we're only better. We only become better. And so we must seek them out. We must leave the comfort of our current position or zip code and move, and not just make tweets and posts. Make real connections and move into neighborhoods, move into the educational system, and not just college. I'm talking about all the way down to elementary school, and pull it forward. Create a true and lasting and meaningful relationship. That's what we are talking about here. Because calling in Black, the weathering experience, particularly for your employees of color, it's an experience and burden that they've had to carry their entire lives. Because there is a saying within the African American community that you have to work 3 times harder than your white counterparts. And that means including getting more education. We're looking at systems right now, we're looking at the current landscape right now, and African American women are champions and leaders in getting MBAs, higher levels of education and certification, and to keep going just to prove that you belong. Let's not have to prove our humanity. How about we belong because we exist? How about we are? We're part of the culture, we're part of the team, we're part of the infrastructure that, quite frankly, built this country. So, off the backs of enslaved Africans, this country was built on the land that was stolen from our indigenous brothers and sisters. And so, with that said, in a free nation, there's a dynamic opportunity for us. There is a pivotal juncture that we are in our history where no, we can't go backward and change things, but we can move forward with a new vision, a renewed vision, one of connectedness, one of empathy, one of compassion, one of deep, deeply rooted understanding. And so, in that, it's uncomfortable. Culture shifting can be uncomfortable, it can be intimidating. We don't want to upset our stakeholders. But then, if we're so concerned about upsetting the other, what do we really truly value and what do we believe in? So, if we want to create a better world, and that's not just strictly the job of the nonprofit organization, how do we create it within our for profit sectors? How do we build it into our institutions of higher learning? How do we build it? It's reaching, it's amplifying, it is through sponsorship, it is through mentorship, but above all, it is through connecting with our humanity to see ourselves in the perceived other, because there really is no other. We're one. We are the United States. We are one. So I just want to, as I stated in closing, invite you into some curiosity of how you can make your work environment be concerned with the well-being of BIPOC people, how you can become a space, the go-to company and organization that's not just a leader, but a champion that leads the way in equity, that leads the way in belongingness and equity and inclusion. How can you be that voice, be the example, be the trendsetter, and not just a follower? So I hope that in being here today, there were things that you gleaned from this message that can help your organization, that help your institution, your business become better so that you can thrive. Because see here, we're not going back to the clock stopped in Detroit March 13th. Ironically, 313 is when the clock stopped. And we went into sheltering in place. We went into quarantine. That world is gone. We're co-creating a new one. And so it is my hope that we don't have to call in Black because our environments are not supporting us. That we don't have to worry about code switching, or that the names that we have are so heavy and they're too difficult to pronounce that we have to dial back or shave off or hide or repress parts of our identity just because we want to feel like we belong into spaces that don't always necessarily welcome us. You can do that. You can be the change. You can be the leader. And so I'm just asking, inviting, and imploring you to make sure, and if you need support in doing that, please feel free to reach out to me. My website is BerhendaWilliams.com. You can find me on all social medias under Ber-Henda Williams, and let's have a dialogue. Let's have a conversation about how we can create an environment and spaces that support you. Because making sure that you're hiring the right consultants, the people that are not necessarily in the environment, they have that view. Because they're not in it, they can have that bigger view to see what's working, what you can do more, what can be amplified, what needs to be reduced, what needs to be eliminated. Yeah. So let's have a shared vision. Let's have a shared vision of equity. Let's have a shared vision of inclusivity, and definitely that shared vision of belongingness. So I'm so grateful to Dr. AJ for putting the summit on, and all of the speakers that are participating throughout this very unique and very timely summit. But I'm asking you, the leader, the champion, the heart of the organization, to go within and create a space that works for all. Because in you doing so, creating that space that works for all, in you creating a work environment, teams that are not just high performing, but have high impact, that are changing the community around you, which then changes the world. Each of us has a role to play. All of us have a role to play. But it's up to us to make those decisions and have courageous conversations. We have to have them if we truly want to see something different, if we truly want to see innovation. Then it all boils down to the environment and those who are around us, and if they all look like us, how do we grow? We don't. We must understand that an oppressive system doesn't just impact one person or one group of people. It's even detrimental to the oppressor. So with that, I am so grateful to be here. Like I said, there's a comment right here in the comments. There's my name, my website. I'd love to have a conversation with you about really it's inclusion. My work is decolonization and anti-racism work, but it's really about shifting our culture and our value system. And I am so excited and thrilled at this opportunity and would love to further engage you. So I'm there, right there, and across all social media platforms, Ber-Henda Williams. If you go, I'm the only one in the world. If you forget any of the places to check in with me, but I hope that you do enjoy and get the most out of this time, because this is a very reflective time that we're in, a time for us to do things differently, and a time for us to strategize and implement ways that we can do things differently. Because we're only stronger and better when we are unified and when we're together. And so as a leader, vulnerability is also one of your greatest assets, because you don't have to know it all. You don't have to know everything, and you don't have to be everything. But when you can bring in the right talent of visionaries, the right talent of compassion, the right talent of diversity in both gender, orientation, ethnic background, philosophical, religious beliefs, let people bring their whole selves into the environment, and the whole environment flourishes when we don't have to diminish or dial back our identities, when we can be fully who we are, all of who we are. It makes it better. So, like I said, I love to stay in touch with you. And Dr. AJ, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. This was so amazing. This was just so amazing. I highly recommend everybody get in touch with Ber-Henda. These conversations, these are the conversations that she and I have all the time. They're ongoing, they're never ending, and they're super, super energizing. So thank you, Ber-Henda, for bringing that energy to the C3EB Summit and for contributing your time, experience, expertise, and insights, and making this summit so beautiful so that we can all learn and grow together. Thank you again.
Oh,
and
thank you.
And for all of our listeners tuning in live or later, thank you for tuning into this. Make sure you check out some of our other sessions. We actually have one starting in less than 5 minutes, so we will see you there. All right.
All right, see you later.
Bye.